Hey guys, tonight we slip into mud-caked boots and stagger through the back streets of a storm-lashed medieval town. The kind where the wind bites, the rain stings, and the buildings seem to lean just a little too close together, like they're whispering secrets about you behind your back. Rainwater trickles down your collar. Thunder bellows like a drunken giant, and you're navigating by little more than the faint sound of laughter somewhere ahead. Hoarse cackles, slurred ballads, the clatter of mugs hitting wood. You're soaked hungry and kind of regretting every life choice that led to this moment. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Midnight in Manila, 3 a.m. in Ohio, I want to know. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge deeper into the labyrinth of this old village, your boots squelching in mud that feels suspiciously warm. Roofs droop under the weight of centuries. Windows warped and flickering with candlelight seem to blink at you as you pass. Everything creaks shutters in the wind, weathered beams your own knees. The sky above is a heavy lid, the clouds thick enough to choke out the moon. And somewhere behind you a cat yowls like it knows something you don't. The smell hits next wet wool chimney soot, old hay and human life at its most unfiltered. Your cloak clings like a wet rag. Each gust drives more water down your spine. But then through the haze and drizzle you spot it. One doorway glows golden. It's crooked, sure. The timber frame sags. The handle looks like it's been used as a weapon more than once. But compared to the darkness outside, it's practically a beacon. The laughter grows louder. There's clinking glass, or maybe just clay. The warm blur of noise and heat dances at the edge of your senses, drawing you like a moth to a dangerously alcohol-soaked flame. You pass a pair of drunkards slumped beside a rain barrel, one of them serenading a turnip. He tips an invisible hat as you go by. Classic. Your hands are frozen, your stomach growls, and this door, this battered, groaning slab of wood, is your last hope before the storm carries you off like a poorly dressed Dorothy. As you step forward, a gust nearly rips the door from its hinges. You catch it in both hands, shoulder your way in, and everything changes. Instant warmth smacks you in the face. A wall of heat thick and oily, full of breath and fire, and something unmistakably edible, if unidentifiable. Behind you, the door slams shut of its own accord, muting the storm to a dull growl. Before you, chaos reigns. But for one blissful second, you just stand there, dripping, steaming, trying to process the sensory uppercut you've just received. This is no noble hall, no sanitized movie set. This is the underbelly of history, the cozy chaos of a place where the rules are different, the ceilings are low, and the floor might actually be moving underfoot. You're not in your century anymore. You're not even in your element. And you probably won't survive this. But you'll try. Because in here, amid the glow and noise and half-familiar smells, there's something magnetic. Dangerous, yes, but also real. Every inch of this tavern promises a story. And you just walked into the middle of it. Welcome to the night. The door creaks on rusted iron hinges, shrieking like it hasn't been oiled since the last plague. It shudders as it swings open, and you step fully inside, boots leaving soggy prints on uneven stone. The interior slams into your senses like a tavern-shaped tidal wave. First, the heat. It doesn't just warm you, it engulfs you. This is not polite warmth. It's the damp, clinging sweat of too many bodies, packed into too little space, seasoned with fire smoke and whatever's bubbling in the corner cauldron. The air is thick, visible, even curling with smoke that stings your eyes and makes every breath feel like a sip of someone else's story. Then the smell hits. Not one smell, a festival of odors. Burned wood, damp wool, old ale, dog fur, and something that might be roasted turnip, or wet leather, or both. The tavern has clearly absorbed centuries of spillage, sweat, and secrets. You imagine if these walls could talk, they wouldn't. They'd just belch and slap you on the back. Your cloak drips steadily. No one helps. No one even looks up. You're just another soggy figure crossing into their dimension, a walking puddle in an already oversloshed world. You take a cautious step forward and realize the floor is slippery, possibly from spilled drink, possibly from something alive. The lighting doesn't help. Everything flickers, including your confidence. Candles stuck into beer bottles, sconces stuffed with tallow, a few hearths glowing dimly behind clouds of rising steam. Shadows crowd the corners. There are nooks in here where time has probably curled up and died, or hibernated. You shuffle to one side as a barmaid storms past, balancing 4 mugs a ladle, and a child who might be hers or might be a tip. Her braid slaps your shoulder as she passes. You don't even register a complaint. The room's too loud to bother. To your left, a man sings to a bucket. To your right, 2 bearded figures argue over what seems to be a taxidermied weasel. Straight ahead, a fireplace roars, and beside it stands the source of the warmest, weirdest part of this sensory circus, the kitchen, or what passes for it. There's no door, just a gap in the wall with smoke pouring out. You glimpse a pot the size of a bathtub. A hunched figure ladles from it with the solemnity of a priest. The fire hisses as drips fall into it. Above, herbs, or possibly weeds, dangle from the rafters like dry, fragrant bats. Somewhere someone sneezes violently. No one says bless you. You remove your cloak, shake it once, and instantly regret it. A wave of droplets arcs majestically through the air and lands on a nearby bench, eliciting a single raised eyebrow from its occupant, a large man with a scar that has its own zip code. You nod an apology. He nods back. Crisis averted. You sidestep again this time to avoid a small dog in a knit cap dragging an old shoe. You marvel for a moment, where did it get that hat? Then you realize you're blocking the way for 2 children, carrying what looks like an entire goose feathers and all. No one stops to explain anything. You move toward the bar, or what might be the bar. It's less a formal counter and more a haphazard line of barrels stacked too high, topped with planks baskets, and at least 1 human skull used as a tip jar. Behind it stands a towering wall of shelves, saggants under jars, bottles and leather pouches that look suspiciously animate. You catch sight of a chalkboard, its scrawl barely legible. Ale warm, ale warmer. Something red. Don't ask. The don't ask seems popular. Someone coughs hard enough to dislodge plaster from the ceiling. You dodge just in time and find yourself next to a man who might be asleep or petrified. Either way, he makes a fine coat rack. You hang your outerwear on him with the respect due a fellow traveler of questionable choices. And then you pause, right in the middle of it all, just to breathe. The tavern pulses around you like a living thing. Laughter crescendos and crashes. Chairs scrape, mugs thud, dice bounce. Your senses are on fire in the best, worst way possible. You don't belong here, not really, but the room doesn't care. It accepts you the way it accepts smoke and dogs and turnips that might be people. You're not an intruder. You're just next. You finally inch away from the door, guided more by the flow of humanity than any clear destination. The place is packed tighter than a pilgrim's travel pouch. Elbows, cloaks, and dangling tankards form an obstacle course of medieval proportions. You sidestep a bard, tuning a lute duck under a hanging goose carcass, hopefully decorative, and squeeze past a cluster of locals deep in a heated argument about whether a goat counts as a legal witness. The whole place buzzes with kinetic, unruly energy. A pot somewhere boils over and hisses angrily, as if even the kitchen resents being kept waiting. There's no theme music here, no carefully curated ambiance. Just the real-time orchestra of tavern life. The guttural laugh of a man who's had too much. The yelp of someone who's had too little. The pounding of boots on wood in some kind of impromptu dance that doesn't even try to keep rhythm. It's a concert of chaos, and you're in the front row. Dogs roam freely, of course. Not a noble breed in sight. Just wiry mutts with intelligent eyes and questionable hygiene. One stops to sniff your boot with the intensity of a customs agent. Another drags a chicken wing under a table like a furry dragon hoarding treasure. Above all, the light flickers. Candles jammed into mismatched holders, oil lamps hanging from ropes, and hearth fires that roar like they have something to prove. Shadows leap across the walls like drunken puppets. 1 minute someone's face is lit like a saint's portrait. The next they vanish into gloom only to re-emerge from the smoke, like a ghost with strong opinions on ale quality. A tankard slams down nearby. You turn just in time to see a toothless man grin at you with the intensity of a winning gambler. He raises his mug in your direction, a clear invitation, or maybe a challenge. You respond with the universal signal of, "I'm just passing through," which he interprets as, "Yes. Please, let's be best friends forever." He scoots over. Great. But honestly, you're not that bothered. You're already soaked. You're already here. And whether it's the heat, the smells, or the fact that the outside world feels impossibly far away, you find yourself smiling. Just a little. A group near the fireplace is engaged in some kind of game involving bones, dice, and insults in 3 languages. Every time someone rolls a 6, they yell, "Beans" at the top of their lungs. No one questions it. You suspect no one remembers why. Another group shares a meal over a plank balanced on their knees. There's a roasted bird in the middle, possibly pigeon, possibly squirrel, and a stew so thick it defies physics. They pass around hunks of bread, the size of bricks, using them to scoop soak or defend dependent on the situation. One corner houses a semi-official bard. He's tunelessly plucking away, weaving a story about a princess who turned into a fish and eloped with a lamp. At least that's what you think he said. It's hard to tell over the clatter of a chair falling and someone yelling, "You call that a tune, you cabbage." No one intervenes. Every sense is overwhelmed. The smoke curls into your nostrils. The floor shifts beneath you, whether from footsteps or the structural guilt of centuries you're not sure. Every surface is sticky. Every cushion flattened. Every person louder than they need to be. But there's something oddly comforting in all this disarray. A sense that you're not just witnessing history, you're part of it now. You finally manage to wedge yourself onto a bench that has clearly survived several bar fights and possibly one minor siege. Across from you sits a woman in a feathered hat, stabbing something green with a dagger. She doesn't acknowledge you. You appreciate that. And then, just as you're beginning to think you might acclimate to this mayhem, the room erupts. Not in violence, not yet, but in sound. Someone starts a song. Loud, off-key, infectious. Within moments, others join in, banging mugs, stomping boots, and belting out lyrics about sheep taxes and what happens when you marry your cousin's cousin. You hum along. You have no idea what you're singing, but that's part of the point. This isn't just a tavern. It's an ecosystem. A living, sweating, occasionally bleeding organism. And now you're one of its cells. Historians still argue whether medieval taverns were truly as chaotic and central to community life as the lore suggests. But sitting here with your back against ancient wood and a bowl of something ominously steaming being shoved into your hands, it's hard not to believe it. And hey, at least it's warm. The tavern breathes. Not metaphorically, not poetically. It breathes, inhales the cold, rain-soaked night through its crooked doorways, and exhales heat sound and the unmistakable smell of something boiling that probably shouldn't be. You feel it underfoot first. The straw, soggy, matted, and definitely moving. You're not sure if it's just your imagination or if something under there has legs, but it squishes with every step, whispering against your soles like ancient gossip. Bits of old bread and bone crunch beneath your heel. Someone's lost a shoe. Someone else has found it. Neither seems concerned. Above you, the ceiling sags like it's tired of centuries of drinking songs. Rafters bear the scars of 1,000 tankard tosses, and at least one attempted lynching. Herbs dangle overhead, rosemary, sage, possibly parsley, and one bundle that smells like someone dried sadness itself. Cobwebs stretch lazily from beam to beam thick enough to hold coins or catch birds. You glance to your right and instantly regret it. A man grins at you with a mouth full of teeth that have clearly negotiated their own treaties with time. He raises a chunk of bread and waves it like a flag. You nod back. It's that kind of place. The table nearest you groans with life. Half a wheel of cheese sweating under candlelight shares space with pickled eggs. A dull knife and something unidentifiably brown in a bowl. It's unclear whether it was served or simply arrived on its own. Either way, no one's asking questions. A girl with wild eyes and wilder hair darts past, balancing a jug the size of her torso. She yells something in dialect so thick it could be spread on toast. Everyone laughs, including the jug. Possibly. In the far corner, a man snores with conviction, cradling a lute like it's a lost lover. A cat curls on his lap eyes, glowing in the half-light. Every now and then the cat opens. One eye assesses the room and closes it again like a disappointed landlord. The walls are carved, not artfully, just scratched, gouged, and stabbed with whatever was at hand. Names, symbols, vows, threats, the occasional drawing of a creature with too many limbs. Some of the marks glow faintly, but that might just be the candle smoke messing with your vision. The tavern breathes again. You're sweating now, your damp clothes steaming gently as you absorb the room's relentless heat. You try to shift, but the bench groans and shudders like it's not entirely thrilled with your presence. You hear a creak from above. Not a floorboard, not footsteps. Something slower, heavier. The roof, maybe. Or history itself rolling over in its sleep. Across the room, a fight almost starts. Almost. A shout, a shove. Then the keeper. A presence you'll learn more about soon clears their throat, and the tension dissolves like soap in hot ale. People return to their mugs, muttering. One man flips a coin that may or may not be made of actual metal. Someone behind you sneezes violently. You flinch, but the crowd barely notices. The man beside you hands him a cloth that might once have been white. They clink mugs. All is forgiven. Every moment something shifts. New smells emerge. Burned onion, stale cider. The undeniable bouquet of someone removing a boot. You're never quite sure if the sound in your ear is laughter or someone choking on a pickled eel. It's the kind of place where distinctions blur, where survival means blending in, drinking what you're handed and asking zero questions about what just splashed onto your sleeve. And yet amid the madness, there's rhythm. The tavern works. Somehow. People eat, people drink, people laugh and snore and argue and woo and gamble and collapse in what you assume are traditional patterns. There's a strange harmony to it all, like watching bees, drunk on mead, bumbling into each other, but always finding their way back to the hive. Quirk of the night. A man at the next table insists his chicken is blessed. He feeds it morsels of stew and swears it can predict rain. You ask how, and he winks, taps his nose and says, "She frowns when the gods are thirsty." The chicken, for the record, looks smug. In some corners of academia, there's still debate about whether medieval taverns were more egalitarian than modern pubs, places where class, gender, and occupation briefly blurred under the equalizing fog of ale and bad lighting. Sitting here with a butcher, snoring beside a monk, a thief, arguing with a scribe and a goat wearing a scarf. You're inclined to believe they might be right. You lean back, careful not to touch anything sticky, and exhale. You are inside the beast now. The belly of the medieval social world. No pretenses, no performances. Just the thrum of humanity, raw and fermented. The tavern shifts again, breathing, living, waiting. There's no logic to the layout. No signs. No helpful map nailed to a wall with you are here, scrawled next to a red X. The tavern was clearly assembled in layers like an onion or a lie. Rooms were added when needed. Walls knocked down when inconvenient. Furniture was made by drunk carpenters and arranged by committee specifically. A committee that hated walking in straight lines. Tables are crammed together so tightly that patrons must collaborate just to stand. You want to leave your bench? That requires negotiation with at least 3 people, 2 dogs and a bench leg, that seems to have splinters on purpose. The spaces between tables are barely wide enough for the average butt cheek. People pass sideways diagonally, or not at all. The bar, if you can call it that, is more of a suggestion than a destination. A plank leans across 2 barrels weighed down with mug stains and a slowly melting wheel of butter. Behind it, chaos. Shelves lean with age and regret, stocked with jugs, labeled only by color or smell. You see dark bitter Thursday, and one ominous jar simply tagged "Don't touch again." Still the patrons flow, with the madness. A server slinks past you carrying a tray stacked with bowls of something gray and quivering. She doesn't spill a drop, despite the path being more obstacle course than hallway. She probably hasn't looked down in years, just navigates by instinct, echolocation, and pure tavern muscle memory. One table plays a game of throwing coins at a rat. Another hosts a debate on whether trolls have toes. A third simply yells at passers-by to sit down and explain their dreams. Nobody knows why. Nobody dares ask. A man climbs onto a table and recites a poem in a language no one understands. Everyone applauds anyway. Moments later, he vanishes. You suspect the tavern absorbed him, like it occasionally does with full meals, sentimental hats, and time itself. Overhead ropes crisscross the ceiling once used for hanging herbs, but now repurposed as coat hangers drying lines and the occasional swing. You spot a child gliding past your head giggling, propelled by the laughter of half the room and the horror of the other half. You take a moment to survey the room more critically. Every corner seems to have its own weather system. Over near the hearth, it's dry and blazing faces glisten with sweat, and the walls shimmer. Farther back near the pantry curtain, it's drafty and damp, as though the building itself is weeping. Near the privy, don't ask, just don't breathe. There's a rhythm to the room, yes, but it's jazz chaotic, improvised, never repeating. No 2 nights here are the same. Maybe no 2 hours. The tavern shifts as its patrons shift, absorbing new arrivals, repelling those who push the chaos too far, and silently judging everyone in between. A dog leaps onto a bench, snatches a loaf of bread, and disappears under a table without consequence. You're not sure if it was a pet or part of the entertainment. Nobody stops it. A woman laughs. A man throws a bone in the same direction, possibly as tribute. There's a man in the corner wearing a hat made entirely of spoons. No one asks why. That's the rule here, no questions. Only acceptance or avoidance. Historians still debate whether medieval taverns functioned as deliberate refugees from social structure, or whether they were just as hierarchical, only messier. But here, in this heaving, breathing wood and smoke jungle status, seems to matter less than volume. He who shouts loudest claims the table. She who laughs hardest wins the room. You rise momentarily trapped between a spinning bard and someone flinging pickled onions at a passing waiter. No one apologizes. You duck sidestep and immediately find yourself in a new pocket of the tavern, this one darker, quieter. People playing a game involving strings and bones. You back out slowly. The bones are moving. This tavern isn't designed for comfort. It's designed for survival. You eat quickly, drink constantly, and keep your eyes moving. The only thing still in this room is the ceiling barely, and that may change if the singing upstairs gets any louder. And still it works. Somehow, amid the chaos and spilled drink and questionable stew ingredients, this place survives. People find each other. Games are played. Deals are made. You hear someone shout to the wedding and realize someone is now wearing a crown made of sausages. There's cheering. A mug is thrown in celebration or protest. It's hard to tell anymore. This isn't comfort. It's energy, raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic. And you're just starting to feel alive again. Every world has a center of gravity. In this one, it's not the hearth, not the bar, not even the stew pot, though it has a gravitational pull all its own. No, the true nucleus of this medieval maelstrom stands silently behind the chaos, watching, calculating, possibly reading your soul like an open tab. The tavern keeper. You notice them before you mean to. Not because they speak rarely, not because they shout never, but because everything else orbits them. Patrons glance over their mugs in the keeper's direction before making decisions. Fights begin, but die under that stare. Even the dogs seem to avoid crossing their line of sight. They don't wear a name tag or a smile. Their apron is stained with 1,000 forgotten meals. Their boots laced tight leave tidy prints in the messiest straw. Their arms are crossed, their gaze unblinking. It's not that they're unfriendly. It's that they are sovereign. This is not a person who works here. This is someone who is here, rooted, embedded, older than the floorboards, possibly older than the concept of debt. No ledger, no scroll, not even a piece of charcoal. The keeper runs this place by memory instinct and some internal system that would make an accountant cry. You see them glance across the room, and within moments, a new mug arrives at the right table. A pot is refilled. A game of dice is quietly reined in. A man sneaking out the back door is gently reminded with a mug, hurled with surgical precision, that tabs come due. You decide not to test them. The keeper speaks only when necessary. A grunt here, a single word there, once just a nod. And yet whole sentences are understood. No, that's not your seat. Yes, I saw that. Try it again, and you'll be feeding the rats. You watch them work, or rather not work. They flow, drift from table to table like a weather system. Never rushed, never idle. At one point, you swear they materialize out of nowhere to hand a screaming child a boiled potato, which immediately quiets the kid like a magic spell. No one questions it, not even the potato. Their age is unknowable, could be 40, could be 80, could be undead. Their eyes are sharp, humorless, but not cruel. Just efficient, as though time itself gave up on this tavern and left it in their care. A man tries to argue about a bill, a mistake clearly. The keeper listens silently, waits, then without a word, produces a small item from their pocket, a string of knotted cords that somehow represents everything. The man drank 8 and tried to deny. The man pays. Immediately. This is the person who remembers your face before you walk in. Who knows how much you owe before you do? Who remembers your grandfather's favorite drink and possibly your grandfather's sins? Some claim the keeper has a perfect memory. Others say it's less memory and more intuition, an uncanny ability to read behavior like a bard reads the crowd or a wolf reads the wind. Either way, no one tests them twice. Quirk of the day, someone bets they can stump the keeper by ordering something made up. A frothy plum gargle, they shout. The keeper blinks once, then turns, retrieves a dusty bottle, pours, and slides the glass over. The man takes a sip and instantly reconsiders his life. You watch him nod slowly, then tip a coin into the tip skull with something like reverence. Historians still argue whether medieval tavern keepers held any real power, or if they were simply fixtures like tables or firewood. But here in this thumping heart of ale and anarchy, the keeper is judge, oracle, and undertaker. They decide what's tolerated, who's thrown out, what becomes tradition. And somehow they remember everything. At one point your eyes meet, just for a second. It's not hostile, not warm, just a recognition. You exist, they've noted it. Your sins will be filed accordingly. Later, as a scuffle breaks out over a spilled dice cup, the keeper doesn't move, doesn't flinch, just raises an eyebrow. The scuffle ends. Both men sit down like chastised schoolboys. One apologizes to the table. The other offers bread as penance. You sip your drink. You breathe slowly. You're safe for now because you haven't annoyed the keeper. Yet, eventually you gather the courage or the thirst to approach what passes for the bar. It's less a structured counter and more a battlefield of cups, crumbs, and unidentified liquids. You wait politely. A mistake. This place doesn't reward politeness. It rewards elbows and volume. You lean in, nod toward the nearest staff-shaped blur, and say the words that have kicked off many an unfortunate chapter in tavern history. I'll have what they're having. The keeper, or maybe it's an assistant keeper, doesn't even blink. Just dips a mug into a large barrel behind the bar, lifts it with the practiced indifference of someone who's done this 20,000 times, and sets it down with a solid final thunk. The mug is wooden, rough around the rim, possibly older than your immediate ancestry. The liquid inside is dark, amber thick, and steaming faintly in a way that suggests it might be thinking for itself. You lift it cautiously. It smells like sour bread and burnt apples. You take a sip. Oh no. It hits your tongue like a loaf of rye soaked in vinegar and ambition. Warm, not just room temperature, but body temperature. Like someone brewed it inside a sleeping bear. You cough, you blink, you immediately take another sip because somehow it's not terrible. It's not good. Let's not pretend. But it's not terrible. It's bread flavored maybe. Or cheese adjacent. Possibly both. It's fuzzy on the edges and oddly satisfying. You can't stop sipping. Maybe it's psychological. Maybe your standards are now officially subterranean, but either way, you drink. There's no fruit, no garnish, no crushed ice, no umbrella. This is not a beverage, it's a survival mechanism. Beer, ale, mead, whatever this is, it's safer than water. Literally. The water here might kill you. This at least will only punch your liver once or twice before settling down to do its job. You glance around and realize everyone's drinking. Even the goat, weirdly. Mugs of varying sizes pass hand to hand, some carved, some metal, one made from a hollowed gourd. They clink together in toasts both solemn and absurd. You catch phrases like "to the pig" and "for the bridge that didn't fall." Quirk of the moment, someone's drinking out of a boot, not boot-shaped. An actual boot. There's laughter, applause. No one questions it. You sip your own drink and quietly thank the gods for wooden mugs. Historians often note that medieval drinks were low in alcohol compared to modern brews, but high in sediment bacteria and personality. Some ales were more porridge than potion. Recipes varied wildly, and flavor subjective. What mattered was that it didn't kill you quickly. Across the room, a man insists that his particular brew tastes like courage. His friend claims his tastes like regret. Both keep drinking. You realize this tavern isn't about pleasure. It's about ritual. Drinking is participation. Drinking is blending in. Drinking is proof that you are here, that you are one of them, that you belong, or at least that you're trying. You try again. The taste shifts slightly. There's something earthy now, or maybe peaty, like someone stirred in a stick for flavor. You swear there's a hint of onion or despair. It's hard to tell. Still you drink. A woman slams down beside you, mug in hand, face flushed with either joy or rising fever. She points at your drink and says, "Good batch tonight. Last week it smelled like fish." You nod. She grins. That's how you know it's real. She adds, then downs her own in one go. You try to imagine chugging yours and immediately decide against it. In one corner, a bard begins singing an ode to ale. The chorus goes, "It fills the soul and feeds the lice." Everyone joins in. A toast follows. More mugs clash. Someone attempts a handstand on a bench and fails with flair. There's a rhythm to it all if you listen closely. Sip, shout, laugh, belch, repeat. You sip again, you laugh too, and belch softly. You're adapting. One man insists that if you drink 3 mugs in a row, the 4th grants visions. Another warns that the 2nd will make you confess your darkest secrets. A third swears he once drank a mug so strong it made his beard grow backwards. You believe all of them, at least a little. The keeper watches from their post, stone-faced arms crossed. They know who's had too much. They know who's about to. They never intervene. They just wait. Like gravity, you lift your mug one final time. It's heavier now. Or you are. The room swims slightly, but in a friendly way, like it wants to hug you and maybe fall down with you at the same time. This is no wine tasting, no refined sipping. This is drink as history, drink as community, drink as ritual. And whether you like it or not, you've joined the dance. Clunk. That's the sound of your mug meeting another's. Not in ceremony. Not even in celebration. Just because that's what happens here. A nod, a glance, a raised drink. And the mugs meet like 2 helmets in a friendly headbutt. Welcome to the communal rhythm of medieval hydration. You clink wooden tankards with someone who might be a blacksmith, or a mercenary, or a very angry baker. He says something indecipherable, probably a toast and grins, through a gap-toothed mouth that's mostly gums and joy. You nod, sip, and accept the communion. Drinking here isn't about thirst or even pleasure. It's a survival tactic. And not just against the cold or the damp or the loneliness of a world where nobody lives past 40 unless they own land and luck. No drinking together is a social vaccine, a way to inoculate yourself against suspicion, against isolation, against becoming that weird one in the corner who doesn't drink. That person rarely lasts long. You glance around. No one drinks alone. They might sit alone for a moment, sure, but soon a stranger joins them. A mug is offered. A tale is traded. Drinking here is less consumption, more performance. You show up. You sip. You participate. The mugs are mismatched. The hands that hold them more so. You see peasants a knight still in partial armor. A woman with ink-stained fingers who's probably either a scribe or a very stressed alchemist. Everyone drinks the same sludge. No one complains. It's the great equalizer, more effective than the law, more binding than faith. Hygiene laughable. Mugs are shared passed hand to hand, lip to lip. The idea of backwash hasn't been invented yet, or if it has, it's shrugged off as a seasoning. One man sneezes directly into his tankard, then drinks anyway. You try not to gag. He raises the mug to you with pride. You try to think of how many diseases are being swapped here, and then immediately decide not to. That path leads to madness or sobriety, and neither is an option. A young woman slides onto the bench beside you. Her cloak is patched. Her boots unlaced, her smile easy. She taps your mug with hers. Don't think, just drink, she says. Then tosses her head back and gulps. You do the same. It goes down smoother now, like your taste buds have signed a treaty of resignation. Nearby, a man finishes his mug and slams it upside down on the table. Others follow. Soon an entire section of the room is pounding their mugs, rhythmically chanting something about goats and glory. You have no idea what's happening, but you're clapping along. Ritual. It's not just the drinking. It's everything around it. The way people toast before each sip. The way they thump their mugs after. The way they lean in share tales, pretend the ale is loosening their tongues, when really it's just permission. You overhear stories. One man claims to have outrun a wolf by slapping it with a fish. A woman insists her third child was born during a bar fight. A bard recounts his affair with a noblewoman and her sister and her husband. Nobody corrects anyone. Truth isn't the point. The point is the telling, the performance. There's even a sort of etiquette. Don't toast with an empty mug. Don't sip during someone's story climax. Always drink if someone says to the harvest, no matter the season. And never, never insult the house ale. That's like slapping the tavern itself in the face. You raise your mug again and find yourself clinking with 3 others. Laughter erupts. Someone shouts to new boots and old debts, and everyone drinks like it's scripture. You do too. Historians still argue whether the social rituals of medieval taverns served as community glue or just as a mask for deeper divisions. But here, surrounded by sweat and smoke and noise, it feels real. It is glue, muddy, sticky, possibly contagious glue. But it holds people together, at least for tonight. Quirk of the hour, a man is drinking through a hollow bone. He says it aerates the flavor. You're pretty sure it just smells worse. He offers you a sip. You politely decline. He nods with the solemnity of a priest. Somewhere someone sings again. The chorus is nonsense, the verses are filth, but the harmonies are weirdly tight. Mugs sway in rhythm. You join in not because you know the words, but because that's what you do here. By now your mug's nearly empty. You swirl the last inch. It sloshes thicker than it should be. There's something floating in it. Possibly a breadcrumb. Possibly a story waiting to happen. You drink it anyway. Because here drinking isn't optional. It's sacred. Eventually the crowd shifts. Mugs lower. Bellies rumble in sync. Conversations pause, if only briefly. You feel it like a tremor in the straw-covered floor, an unspoken ripple of expectation. It's time. Dinner, or as the tavern prefers to present it, whatever's still hot. A pot the size of a grave is hauled from the hearth by two sweating lads, each gripping one warped wooden handle. The stew inside has been simmering for a while, possibly a week, possibly since the last equinox. The surface churns with slow bubbles, breaking like muddy geysers, to reveal chunks of something that once had a face, or at least ambitions. You're not invited to serve yourself. The keeper or their assistant, or possibly a random volunteer who lost a bet, takes up the ladle with the gravity of a priest performing last rites. One by one, wooden bowls are filled. No questions asked, no preferences offered. You get what you get. You accept it. And you don't make eye contact with the ladle unless you want to see what fear tastes like. Your turn arrives. The bowl is plunked in front of you with a splatter. It sloshes ominously. A grayish-brown mass bobs to the top, trailing something stringy and green. You take a whiff. It smells like salt onions and wet cave. You glance at your benchmate. He's already elbow deep in his portion, slurping like he's been fasting for a month. So you dig in. It's hot. That's the best thing you can say about it. Warmth spreads from your mouth down your throat, like a slow-moving lava made of turnips, root vegetables, and sorrow. The texture's thick, part soup, part paste, part ancient memory. There's a hint of meat. You don't ask what kind. Someone next to you says beef, but the way they hesitate suggests they mean beefish. Bread follows. Not fresh, not warm, just bread. Dense, dry, and more weapon than food. You could stop a robbery with it. You could prop a door open with it, but you tear off a hunk anyway and dunk it in the stew. It softens slightly. You chew with commitment. Then comes the cheese. It arrives in slabs passed from hand to hand like a sacred relic. It's pale yellow, cracked, and smells like a confession gone wrong. You take a slice. It clings to your fingers. You taste it. It fights back. Sharp, tangy, with a texture of waxed rope. But again, calories are calories. And you're not about to insult a cheese that could probably insult you back. The table grows quieter. Not silent, this place doesn't do silence, but calmer. People eat with focus. Some lean in, shielding their bowls like treasure. Others offer bites across the bench, a sort of stew-based diplomacy. Someone pours ale into their bowl. Someone else stirs their stew with a dagger. Nobody blinks. A dog materializes under your bench. It eyes your bread like it knows something you don't. You give it a crust. It nods. You're now family. Quirk of the table. A man beside you insists he tastes saffron. Another claims it's just dirt and garlic. A third nods sagely and says, "They're the same thing if you eat with enough conviction." You consider this while scraping your bowl clean. You lean back slightly. The warmth spreads from your full stomach to your fingertips. You feel better. Not satisfied, not full in the holiday feast sense, but stabilized. Like a boat that finally stopped leaking, even if it's still floating in suspicious stew. This isn't dinner. It's fuel. It's ritual. It's how people get through another day in a world with bad roads, worse weather, and neighbors who occasionally accuse you of witchcraft. It's about knowing that every evening you'll get anything hot, thick, and marginally edible. Historians still argue whether medieval tavern food was as grim as the stereotypes suggest. Some say, yes, boiled roots mystery meat, and more salt than a sailor's diary. Others claim it wasn't that bad. But here, with your bowl scraped clean and your tongue slightly numb, it's hard to imagine anything more authentic. Another round of bowls goes out. The pot still isn't empty. You wonder if it ever will be. Maybe it just replenishes itself, fed by scraps, rumors, and time. You sip the last of your drink. Wipe your mouth with the sleeve that's already past saving, and sit back to let the food settle. You're not full, but you're here, and you're ready for whatever the night serves next emotionally, if not digestively. The bowls are scraped, the mugs are refilled, the benches creak as full bellies settle, and the tavern exhales a communal sigh, not of peace, mind you, but of readiness. Dinner was just the opening act. The real show begins now. Someone at the far end of the room shouts something unintelligible. It sounds like a toast or a dare. Either way, a roar of laughter follows. Mugs rise again. Ale sloshes onto sleeves and laps, and the noise begins to surge like a tide. A bard previously slumped in a corner and presumed asleep or possibly dead springs to life. His lute, patched together with string and superstition, strikes its first note with a twang that makes the nearest dog bark. He grins, missing at least 3 teeth, and launches into a song about a dragon who fell in love with a chimney sweep. You don't know the tune. You don't need to. Everyone sings along, badly, loudly, beautifully. Dice clatter. Not the polite roll of modern board games. This is war. Wooden cubes rattle against the table, bounce off tankards, land in laps, and sometimes vanish into the straw. Players squint, argue, accuse, demand re-rolls, then laugh like they're getting paid by the decibel. Coins clink. Sometimes those coins are metal. Sometimes they're buttons. Once a dried beetle. Nearby, someone tells a story. A fisherman, perhaps. Or just a man who's heard enough fish stories to fake it. His voice rises and falls like the sea he probably never saw. He gestures with a half-eaten sausage, claims he once caught a mermaid with a comb made of bone and a voice like a harp. The audience leans in. One woman gasps, another rolls her eyes and mutters, "Not this again." The tale continues anyway. At your own table, conversation blooms like mildew. A man beside you insists he's descended from a noble line, but he pronounces Duke like duck, so you remain skeptical. A woman across from you teaches you a drinking game involving flicking crumbs at people who say the word stew. You lose immediately. Then someone makes the mistake of mentioning goats. A joke follows. Then a worse one. Then a loud theatrical reenactment of what goats allegedly do when startled. Laughter erupts. Mugs bang the table in approval. Someone starts a chant. It goes nowhere, but it's spirited. You join in too, because by now, resistance is just another flavor of awkward. A man climbs onto a stool, dramatically clears his throat, and begins reciting what sounds like poetry, or possibly legal testimony. He speaks of betrayal of love, lost of cabbage prices. His voice trembles with emotion. A woman throws a piece of bread at him. He catches it midair and bows. The bard shifts gears. A new song, this one, about a knight who confused a basilisk with a bishop and married the wrong one. People howl. Dogs bark. A baby giggles. You realize you're smiling so wide it hurts. Quirk of the night, a girl no older than 12, wanders through the crowd balancing a tray of pickled eggs and smirking like she knows every secret in the room. She sells out in minutes. You buy one. It tastes like vinegar, salt, and unresolved arguments. You love it. There's a crash. Not a fight, just someone attempting to dance on a table that wasn't designed to support human ambition. They hit the floor with a splat and rise with a cheer. Someone hands them a mug. All is forgiven. The keeper watches it all from their perch arms, crossed one eyebrow slightly arched. They don't move. They don't need to. The tavern polices itself with the strange efficiency of drunken organisms that somehow avoid total collapse. Historians still debate how much of tavern life was exaggerated in records, whether these night-long revels were frequent, rare, or mostly myth. But here, wrapped in laughter, cradled by firelight, your cheeks sore from smiling, it feels undeniable. This is the world's heart beating loud and ridiculous. Another story erupts, something about a monk, a stolen bell, and a very determined goose. You catch only pieces, but you laugh anyway. The mood is catching. You sip your ale and lean back, knowing you're safe here, if only for the night. And the night is far from over. It begins as many poor decisions do with a wink. Not a subtle one, not the sly, low-key glance of a modern rom-com. No, this wink is a full-body event. Eyebrow lurches, shoulder lifts. There's a slight lurch forward as if the man is physically attempting to throw his affection across the table like a sack of grain. The woman he targets raises a single eyebrow and doubles the price of whatever she was charging. Romance here isn't whispered poetry and stolen glances. It's loud. It's messy. It involves elbows on the table and declarations shouted over someone else's turn on the lute. You watch a boy try to woo a girl with a half-eaten apple. She accepts it, then throws it at another boy with better boots. The first one shrugs and returns to his stew. At the next table over, someone scribbles something into a crust of bread using a charred stick. He slides it to the woman beside him. She reads it, laughs, and uses it to mop up her bowl. It's hard to tell if that's a yes or a no, but they're holding hands 20 minutes later, so maybe. A monk, yes, an actual tonsured-robed monk, sits rigidly between two laughing women. His face is red enough to roast marshmallows on. One of the women runs her fingers down the edge of his sleeve and murmurs something that makes his ears twitch. He doesn't move. He doesn't breathe. He might never recover. Romance here doesn't wait for perfect timing. It doesn't need candlelight or flowers. It needs proximity courage and a shared tolerance for questionable cheese breath. You see a woman tilt her mug toward a man across the table. He responds by refilling it. She nods. That's their entire courtship. Flirting is blunt. Sometimes it's just a proposition yelled across the room. Sometimes it's the gifting of something meaningful, like a pickled onion, or the less wet half of one's bread. Someone throws a chicken feather at someone else. That apparently means something, you're not sure what. You're too scared to ask. In one dim corner, a man and woman are locked in deep, dramatic conversation. She gestures passionately. He nods, slowly, eyes fixed on hers. Then abruptly she slaps him. Everyone nearby cheers. He bows, kisses her hand, and they begin dancing. There is no middle ground. Medieval courtship is either awkward glances or emotional warfare. You watch as another suitor slides onto a bench beside a woman already being wooed by someone else. She listens to both shrugs and proposes a contest. Arm wrestling naturally. The winner gets her attention. The loser gets the bread crust. They wrestle. The bench breaks. She leaves with the innkeeper's son instead. Quirk of the moment, someone proposes with a ring made of twisted onion peel. The intended laughs so hard she drops her stew. He retrieves it for her. They're kissing before it hits the floor. A group of musicians starts up a slower tune, relatively speaking. It's still lopsided and vaguely off-key, but it's meant for swaying. Couples emerge. Some look like they've danced together for decades. Others hold each other at arm's length like they're trying to avoid catching feelings or fleas. Either way, they move in loops and hops and the occasional spin that ends in a chair or a nearby wall. You're dragged into it, of course. A stranger grabs your hand and pulls you into the fray. You stumble, nearly fall, then find your footing. It's not elegant. It's not even coordinated. But it's joyful. You spin. You laugh. You almost crash into a serving tray. A cheer goes up anyway. Historians still argue whether tavern romance led to real marriages or just short-term arrangements, best not mentioned in church records. But here, love, whatever it is visible, tangible, loud. People flirt, laugh, fail, try again. No shame, no secrets, just desire dressed in sweat and spilled ale. You watch as the monk escapes his bench, only to be intercepted by the courtesan. She whispers something. He hesitates. She grins. He follows, slowly, reluctantly. Maybe not reluctantly at all. There's something wonderfully democratic about it all. Status matters less here. Wit wins more hearts than wealth. A good story trumps fine clothes. A well-timed pun can earn you more attention than the coin in your pouch. And bread hard, misshapen bread somehow becomes the currency of affection. You return to your bench flushed and slightly dizzy. Someone slides a mug toward you. You clink it automatically, even though you're not sure why. The firelight glows. The noise softens just a little. The night, like your heart, stretches out ahead. Unpredictable welcoming. Maybe dangerous. But if someone hands you another crust of bread, you'll know what it means. It starts with a mug. Of course it does. Nothing good ever begins with, and then someone gently placed their mug down. No, this mug is slammed hard. The table rattles. The ale sloshes. Everyone freezes for half a second, caught in the moment's tension, like animals sensing thunder. Then voices rise. You're not sure what the argument is about. No one is. Possibly a dice game gone sour. Maybe someone insulted someone else's hat, or cheese, or cousin. It doesn't matter. The volume surges. Chairs scrape back. A bench tips over. Someone yells, "You dare," which is never a great sign. A tankard flies. It sails in a perfect arc across the room, trailing droplets like a comet of regret. It misses its target and lands in someone's stew. That someone screams. Someone else laughs. Another mug follows less elegantly. This one hits a man in the shoulder. He stands. He's enormous. Everyone else suddenly remembers somewhere else to look. The tension crackles. Two men square off. One woman cheers. Someone shouts rules and is immediately booed. There are no rules. There is only escalation. A chair lifts, wobbles, flies. It's old, rickety, and clearly held together by dreams. When it crashes into a table, it explodes into splinters and disapproval. Mugs go down. A chicken inexplicably present flaps onto someone's head. The chaos deepens. You duck just in time to avoid a bowl of stew. It hits a support beam with a splat that will feed ants for generations. And then, like magic, the tavern keeper moves. Not fast, not loud, but with the absolute authority of someone who's ended more fights than most people have had birthdays. They step forward, eyes narrowed, arms crossed. No weapon, no shouting, just presence. The room hesitates. One of the combatants, a thin man who's clearly lost momentum, mutters something and looks down. The other, still full of bravado, glares defiantly. The keeper raises one eyebrow. It's over. The bravado deflates. Mugs are righted. Bread is shared. Apologies, mumbled, grunted, implied, make their rounds. One man helps another to his feet. Someone sweeps stew back into the bowl. Like that will erase anything. The tavern exhales. You glance around. Nothing is broken that wasn't already broken. Nothing spilled that won't eventually be licked up by a dog, a goat, or the floor itself. The tavern absorbs the chaos, metabolizes it, and moves on. And just like that drink's resume, you sip yours. It tastes stronger now, like it absorbed the tension too. The bard plucks a cautious chord. Someone starts humming. The spell of destruction is broken, leaving only a trail of smudges and new stories. Historians still argue, whether medieval taverns had any real system of justice or enforcement. Some say tavern brawls were part of the ritual expected, tolerated, even admired. Others claim serious fights led to actual consequences. Here, the consequence is simple: you don't cross the keeper. You spot the chicken again. It's pecking at spilled cheese, looking smug. You admire its resilience. At the far table, someone recounts the brawl, like it happened a decade ago. Did you see the look on his face? I thought the bench would snap sooner. That mug had airtime. It's already myth. Quirk of the hour: a man claims he once stopped a fight by singing. His friends roll their eyes. That was snoring, one corrects. And it made it worse. Someone orders another round. A toast goes up, not to peace, but to recovery. You join in. There's something deeply human about this rhythm. The tension, the eruption, the quick return to laughter, like storm and sunshine on the same afternoon. The tavern is designed for it. The tables are scarred, the mugs mismatched. Nothing precious, nothing fragile. It's a place made to be broken and rebuilt night after night. You feel a bruise forming on your arm. No idea how you got it. Doesn't matter. You're grinning. There's a clatter behind you, a stool topples, but it's just someone celebrating a dice win. A little too hard. No fists this time. Just wild cheering and a new chant involving cabbage and destiny. The bard picks up speed again. The song returns. Voices rise in chorus. And once more the tavern lives. At some point the edges of the night start to fray. The laughter dulls to a hum. The songs lose their melody. Words slur. Heads droop. The fire burns low, casting shadows that move slower now, like even the light is tired. You stretch your legs, blink heavily, and realize you have no idea what time it is. The concept of late has melted into something more abstract, like whenever the cheese starts sweating again, or after the third round of goat jokes. And the idea of a proper bed hilarious. Here in the tavern, sleep doesn't arrive gently. It ambushes. It strikes mid-sentence, mid-sip, mid-belch. You glance to your right, someone is already curled beneath the table, using a cloak as a pillow, and what looks like a wheel of bread as a mattress. He's snoring. Loudly, proudly. Across the room, a couple leans against each other, heads touching, mouths open. They're drooling in harmony. A small dog curls up beside them, perfectly content to join the cuddle pile. No one bothers them. This isn't strange. It's normal. The tavern doesn't offer rooms for the night, not in the modern sense. There might be a rickety staircase somewhere, leading to a loft with straw piles and dreams of privacy. But it's already full or reserved for the innkeeper's extended family, and particularly well-behaved chickens. For everyone else, you sleep where you land. That bench you've been sitting on, now it's a bed. The floor under the table, prime real estate. A patch of wall that isn't damp luxury sweet. If it's horizontal and not currently occupied by something biting, it'll do. You feel your body begin to fold in on itself. Muscles softening, head tilting. Your eyes flutter, then snap open again as someone shouts to the horse. In a tone of urgency, you're too sleepy to question. It's not cold, at least. The combination of fire bodies, ale, and ambient smoke keeps the chill away. It's not comfortable either, but that's not the point. You don't come to the tavern to rest well. You come to the tavern because it's the one place no one will ask why you've fallen asleep next to a spilled bowl of stew and someone else's shoe. Quirk of the night. A woman climbs onto the bar to claim a snore perch, wraps herself in a rug, and is immediately joined by a cat. Neither of them move again. Someone offers you a rolled cloak as a pillow. You nod in thanks, then realize it smells like fish and goat in that order. You still use it. It's that or the floor. A man on the other side of the hearth mutters to himself, recounting some forgotten battle, or possibly arguing with a rat. He eventually slides down the wall and begins snoring mid-rant. You admire the efficiency. The fire crackles low and lazy. The air is thick with the sense of ash, breath, and sleep. Your limbs feel heavy. The weight of the day, or the ale, or the bread brick you call dinner, presses you gently down. Historians still debate whether medieval taverns truly welcomed guests to sleep on the floor, or whether this was more common in poorer or rural establishments. Some argue there were always straw beds available for coin. Others suggest that especially during festivals or cold seasons, communal sleeping was the norm. Here, in this crowded, chaotic cave of dreams, it's hard to imagine anything else. You glance around. Bodies draped over benches. Heads resting on tables. A man curled under a dog, both of them snoring in tandem. Someone has stuffed a rolled-up shirt into a mug and is using it as a pillow. You blink. You accept it. You find your own spot, not ideal, not clean but flat. A corner between the hearth and a wall beam. You tuck your pouch under your tunic, hug your knees to your chest, and close your eyes. The last thing you hear is the muttering of the bard, still half awake, singing lullabies in a language that might not exist. The last thing you feel is the warmth of the hearth on your boots. Then sleep. It takes you like the rest. Not with lullabies or peace, but with the deep, unapologetic pull of exhaustion. You are not alone. You are not clean. You are not comfortable. But you are here, and tonight that's enough. You wake to the sensation of something wet and feathered pecking near your face. It's not elegant. It's not cinematic. It's a chicken. The bird tilts its head, considers your half-open eye, then pecks again, this time at a crust of bread beside your head. Not your crust. Not originally, anyway. But like most things in this tavern, it has become communal property during the night. Your back aches. Your tongue is dry. Your knees crack as you shift positions slowly, untangling yourself from your sleeping posture, something between a question mark and a pretzel. The floor is damp in places you don't want to think about. Your cloak smells like smoke and onions, possibly pickled onions. Around you, the wreckage of the night is everywhere. Bodies stir. Some groan, some mutter. One begins singing softly until he realizes no one's joining in, then stops mid-note and resumes snoring. A woman stretches beneath a bench, then hits her head with a solid thunk and mutters something unholy in 3 languages. The air is thick with the scent of everything. Smoke, spilled ale, body heat, wet wool, and the unmistakable perfume of people who survived another night in too close quarters. The fire is mostly ash, now glowing faintly under the weight of collapsed logs. Someone prods it with a ladle. A dog snoozes in a stew bowl. No one wakes it. Slowly, the tavern stirs back to life, not like a sunrise, but like a hangover that refuses to let you go back to sleep. People rise stiff and confused, checking pockets, sniffing sleeves, and counting their teeth. One man carefully extracts a spoon from his boot. Breakfast arrives not by menu, but by inertia. The pot returns, same pot, possibly same contents. A ladle dips in, lifts out a murky lump of stew, and slops it into bowls. There's no ceremony, no good morning, just food, or what passes for it. You get your share, along with another slab of bread that has clearly seen better centuries. You chew automatically the same way you might breathe in fog or walk through drizzle. It's not about enjoyment, it's about maintenance. The stew is even thicker this morning, gloopier, somehow both hot and cold in the same mouthful. You don't ask questions. You never ask questions. A man beside you tries to start a conversation. Dreamed I was the Pope, he says, pointing to a smudge on his tunic as if it proved something. Had a scepter made of sausage. You nod, then return to your bowl. The chicken from earlier struts past again victorious. It's now wearing a ribbon around one leg. Possibly married. You don't inquire. Somewhere near the back, the sound of retching echoes through the rafters. No one reacts. It's part of the soundtrack now, along with coughing throat clearing and the rhythmic thunk of mugs being banged clean against table edges. You manage to find your boots. One is under a bench. The other is in a puddle of something sticky. You don't look too closely. You just slide your feet in, grit your teeth, and accept your fate. Someone, probably the same bard from last night, plays a slow, sorrowful tune on a lute missing 2 strings. It somehow captures the exact feeling of waking up with one eye crusted shut and half a rat tail in your pocket. Not literal, hopefully. Quirk of the morning. A man insists on doing stretches by the hearth. He says it's for the joints. Everyone gives him a wide berth. Not out of respect, just fear of being tripped over. Historians still debate the realism of medieval tavern mornings, whether people truly collapsed into sleep in public, or whether they staggered home at dawn. But here, watching the slow resurrection of ale-warmed peasants and cloaked strangers, it seems clear. This place wasn't just a night's escape. It was a full-cycle ecosystem. Sleep, food, talk, stew, and repeat. The tavern keeper appears, like always, seemingly from nowhere. They survey the wreckage, the half-clean tables, the snoring uncle draped across a barrel, and say nothing. But a broom appears. The front door is cracked open. Fresh air seeps in like a cautious guest. A few people groan. You finish your stew. You eat the bread. You consider licking the bowl, then reconsider. You rise slowly, carefully. Today begins not with ceremony or optimism, but with survival. You made it through the night. You have stew in your belly. You have your boots. You may even still have your dignity somewhere. And now the world awaits with all its mud misfortune and moments of wonder. But not yet, not quite yet. You linger for just a moment more in the warmth of the tavern, surrounded by the ghosts of last night's laughter. Then with a slow breath and one last sip, you head toward the door. You pause at the threshold, hand on the crooked door. But the tavern doesn't let you go just yet. Because it's not just a pub, it never was. You thought you were stepping into a place to get dry, get warm, get something hot in a bowl. But now, looking around one last time in the gray morning light, you see the truth. This tavern is a world, a parliament of the people, a marketplace of thoughts and lies and second-hand dreams, a courtroom with no laws, but the ones people agree on or pretend to. And above all else, it's a stage. You turn back. Conversations are already stirring small embers, reigniting from the night before. In one corner, two farmers lean over a table, fingers tracing lines in spilled ale, as they discuss a new price for eggs. It's negotiation by instinct, no contracts, no parchment, just looks, nods, and the occasional grunted aye. Elsewhere, a man shows off a dented coin he swears is from the Eastern Empire. No one believes him, but they pass it around anyway, each adding a theory, a joke, a memory. It becomes currency of a different kind, shared wonder. Near the hearth, a woman leans close to another, voice low. You can't hear the words, but you see the furtive glance toward the keeper and the tight nod that follows. A secret traded, a plan set. Maybe a deal, maybe a warning, maybe something bigger. This is how it works here. You don't shout truth from the rooftops. You murmur it over stew. You let your actions speak, or you let your mug clink against the right person's. In the far back, the bard, still awake, possibly fueled by something more than ale, begins a tale. Not a song this time, a story. He stands gestures wide and draws a small crowd. Some laugh, some roll their eyes, but they listen. Because even if half of it's false, it's entertaining. And in a world with few luxuries, a good lie is more valuable than gold. Quirk of the morning, two children challenge a knight to a duel with wooden spoons. He accepts dramatically, loses, and collapses to the floor amid cheers. Someone crowns one of the kids with a piece of toast. The tavern laughs. And just like that, you see how layered this place is. It's not just where people come after their day. It's where their day happens. Justice is handed out here through stares, through stories, through the barkeep's raised eyebrow. That somehow ends disputes more effectively than a sword. News arrives before it hits the town square. Rumors bloom in corners, die in mugs, and get reborn with new details before dessert. Historians still wrestle with how central the tavern really was to medieval life. Was it truly the center of public discourse, or just a pit stop for the weary? But standing here soaking in the blend of smells, murmurs, and motions, you feel the weight of its importance. This place is alive with ideas, with schemes, with laughter sharp enough to wound and soft enough to heal. A man steps onto a table and begins to preach. not about religion, about turnip yield. He has charts drawn in soot on bread. People argue back. Someone throws a spoon. He ducks bows and keeps going. At the next table, two women exchange herbs carefully, discreetly, with murmured instructions. One tucks the bundle into her sleeve like it might save her life. Maybe it will. And above it all, the keeper watches. Their eyes scan the room. They know what's being said. They allow it. Not because they agree, but because they understand the role this place plays. Let the world argue outside. Let the lords hold court in their stone towers. But here, the people rule. You finally step back inside just for a moment more and take a seat. Someone leans over. A stranger. Says something in a whisper. An offer maybe. Or a riddle. Or a job. You listen. You nod. You don't commit. Not yet. Because now you understand the tavern isn't where the story ends. It's where it starts. And just like that, the tavern blurs. Not fades, not crumbles. It dissolves. Slowly like mist, lifting off a field at dawn. One heartbeat, you're there still tasting turnip stew, the next. Sand, warm wind, silence so deep it hums in your ears. You're standing in a new place, though. Time hasn't caught up yet. The smoke from the hearth still clings to your clothes, and a bit of that cheese-smelling regret still lingers under your fingernails. But you're not in the tavern anymore. You're in Egypt, ancient Egypt, not the postcard version, not the slick filtered image you've seen on documentaries. This is real, vast, hot, wind-swept. The sand drifts in lazy spirals. The sun looms like a silent overseer. The Nile glitters in the distance, winding like a silver ribbon laid across the earth. You hear nothing. Then a whisper. Not from the air. From beneath it. Something buried is calling. Your boots, still damp with medieval muck, crunch over the sand as you approach a hill that shouldn't be a hill. Too symmetrical, too deliberate. You climb it step by step, and at the top, you see stone. Weathered, ancient, huge. The remnants of a head, eroded but unmistakable. A sphinx, but not the Sphinx. No, this one is different. This one is underwater, or rather was. Its massive paws and chest still partly submerged in a shallow basin, as if the desert tried to drown it and failed. Around it lie broken blocks, shattered carvings, half-finished columns, and silence. You're looking at a mystery. Because this isn't the famous Sphinx of Giza, this is another, or so the whispers say. Locals have murmured for decades about a second guardian. One older than the pyramids. One shunned by mainstream Egyptology. Divers claim to have glimpsed carved stone faces beneath the silt. Amateur archaeologists whisper of sonar images, too blurry to be definitive, too haunting to ignore. And yet nothing official, nothing sanctioned. You step closer, hand brushing the exposed stone. It's warm from the sun, but cool underneath. The carvings are deep, strange, older than hieroglyphs. Symbols from a time when writing wasn't even writing yet, just meaning chiseled into matter. You feel it again, that pull, that sensation from the tavern, but deeper, heavier. Here the stories don't get sung over mugs. They get buried piece by piece until even time forgets. Historians still argue whether these claims hold any weight. Some say it's just pareidolia, our brains seeing faces in random rock formations. Others point to satellite images, alleged underwater anomalies, and local legends passed down quietly, generation after generation. Quirk of the desert. One of those legends speaks of a creature with the body of a lion, the head of a queen, and the eyes of the stars guarding something not buried but waiting, watching, not inanimate, dormant. You circle the site. Half-dug trenches reveal more blocks lined with erosion patterns that suggest not wind, not water, but deliberate concealment. Someone hid this, not nature. People. And people have been hiding it ever since. You hear boots behind you, real or imagined, an echo of a voice. There's nothing here. You blink. A figure in khaki walks away, clipboard tucked under one arm, radio crackling. A modern archaeologist. A government agent, a ghost. No one talks about this Sphinx on the tour buses. It's not on the museum maps. When you ask the wrong person, they laugh too quickly, change the subject, or point you firmly back to Giza. That's the one. That's the only one. But you've seen this. You've touched it. And you know this story matters. It's not just another monument. It's a wrinkle in time. A question that makes the entire narrative wobble. Because if there's a second Sphinx, then maybe everything we thought we knew about Egypt's timeline, its gods, its rulers, its origins needs rewriting. And maybe that rewriting starts not in libraries or lecture halls, but here in the wind and sand and secrecy, where a forgotten guardian waits. The sand gives way to silt. You blink and the desert dissolves, replaced by murky water, thick and dreamlike. You're no longer standing in dry heat. You're submerged, floating over the ocean floor, a world muffled by depth and mystery. The light above ripples dimly bending as it filters through layers of time and truth. And there it is again. The Sphinx, not the iconic one looming over tourists and souvenir stands. Not the one photographed from every angle, explained in every textbook. This one lies broken beneath the waves, sleeping, some say. Forgotten, others insist, but always present, always watching. The stone head is massive, tilted, partially buried in sand and coral. Erosion has blurred its features, but the shape is unmistakable, lion body, human face. Only, this face doesn't match the one from Giza. The proportions are different. The style is older. Cruder, maybe, or purer. Some say it's female. Some say it's not Egyptian at all. You drift closer, propelled by curiosity more than current. Seaweed waves lazily from between the paws, as if brushing centuries of neglect from ancient carvings. Fish dart through eye sockets, indifferent to the significance of where they swim. A crab clicks its way across an inscription so weathered it might as well be the moon's own graffiti. And still silence. You surface metaphorically or not, and find yourself poring over old sonar scans and diver reports, grainy footage and grainier speculation. Shapes emerge in the silt, angular, deliberate, impossible to dismiss if you know what to look for. Some divers describe descending and feeling something in the water. Not fear, not awe, just observation. As if the stone wasn't inert. As if it remembered. One report speaks of a vast symmetrical structure beyond the Sphinx rectangular, deeply buried, a tomb, a temple, a vault. The language grows uncertain. Could be natural, one entry says, but doesn't feel like it. Feel. That's how the experts talk when the data gets slippery. You feel the truth. You don't always prove it. Historians still argue whether these supposed findings hold any merit. Officially, there's nothing there, just misread sonar, eroded rock, imagination run wild, no digs, no excavations, nothing to see. Move along. Unofficially, whispers grow. About the water sphinx, about a guardian who predates the pyramids, who faced not the desert but the sea. Some claim it's connected to the story of Atlantis, others to lost African civilizations dismissed or erased by colonial scholarship. A few link it to Nefertiti Akhenaten and a time when gods walked among mortals in limestone robes and golden sandals. You wonder why it's being ignored. You look at the satellite images. You read between the lines of expedition reports that suddenly lost funding. You talk to divers who now refuse to return. One says it doesn't want to be found. Another mutters it's waiting for the right person. Then there's the tourist who found a small fragment engraved, smoothed by water, unlike any artifact seen before. He handed it over to a museum. The fragment vanished. He was later quoted saying, "They told me I was mistaken. I'm not." Quirk of the conspiracy, someone launched a crowd-funded expedition once. Independent divers, underwater drones, the whole bit. 2 days and the drones malfunctioned. Communications failed. The project shut down. The footage corrupted. The lead diver hasn't spoken publicly since. You return to the image of that submerged face. Is it real? Is it propaganda? Or is it the tip of something colossal, both physically and historically, that's been hiding in plain sight? Because here's the uncomfortable thought: if this second Sphinx exists, and if it's truly older than the first, then our whole understanding of Egyptian history begins too late. We've been reading chapter 2 as the beginning, and that changes everything. The narrative of linear progress from simple to complex, from chaos to pharaohs, falters. Maybe the ancients weren't climbing upward, but trying to recover something already lost. Maybe the Sphinx at Giza wasn't built first, but second, a remembrance, a reconstruction. A marker pointing back to a forgotten origin swallowed by sea and sand. You drift again through time, through sediment, through possibility, and you can't help but feel it rising through the silt, through the stone, through your bones. The guardian beneath the waves was never sleeping. It was waiting. You surface into the present, gasping not from lack of air, but from the shock of the idea refusing to release its grip. A second Sphinx, an older guardian, a mystery deeper than the Nile and older than the myths we take for granted. And yet, no one's digging. You pace an invisible perimeter in your mind, circling the unanswered questions. If such a monument truly lies beneath the waters, if sonar has hinted at shapes and divers have seen faces, then why isn't the world mobilizing to uncover it? You begin to trace the silence. Funding, they say. Bureaucracy. Red tape. But money flows for less tourist renovations, New walkways around the Giza Plateau, flashy exhibitions. For something of this magnitude, there would be no shortage of interest, no shortage of eyes. Unless there's another reason. Control. Egypt's history is its pride, its tourism, its international identity. Change the narrative, and you destabilize everything. Shift the starting point of civilization, and you undercut generations of scholarship, policy, and power. Institutions built around certainty don't respond well to riddles. And this Sphinx, it's one enormous, immovable riddle. The official line is always the same. Nothing significant has been found. And it's delivered with the calm tone of someone who doesn't want you to look any further. As if certainty is safer than curiosity. As if the past once rewritten might take more than just textbooks down with it. You examine academic publications. Note how few mention anomalies along the coast or unusual sonar returns. You look at old excavation permits denied. Independent researchers shunted to the fringe. Unscientific, they're labeled. Sensationalist. Historians still argue whether these denials stem from methodological caution or something deeper, politics, legacy, fear. Because if the story changes, everything attached to it changes too. The gods, the kings, the origin myths. Imagine what it means if Egypt's pyramids aren't the first stone monuments, but tributes to earlier ones, lost to the sea. Imagine if sphinxes aren't symbols of Egypt's height, but of its memory, its longing. You find old articles published in quiet corners of forgotten journals, quoting locals who've spoken of the submerged lion body for generations. It's always been there, one fisherman says. Even before my grandfather's grandfather. These voices don't make it into museum walls or university halls because the past is supposed to be settled, labeled, understood. This is not, and perhaps that's what scares people the most. Not that the past holds secrets, but that those secrets might survive us. Quirk of the Resistance, one diver claims he saw a panel of carvings under the water symbols, unlike any known Egyptian script. He took a photo. It disappeared from his device. He took another. It survived. Barely. The image is blurry, corroded, but the shapes, that don't match anything. Not Coptic, not hieroglyphic. Something older, something alien. You stare at the image for hours, cross-referencing every known script from every nearby culture. You come up short. It's not what's there, it's what's not. And all the while, the official silence drones on. No archaeological evidence supports the claim. Nothing of historical significance has been verified. You wonder, is it easier to preserve the lie than risk the questions? You remember the tavern now. The chaos, the noise, the keeper, who saw everything but said nothing, who controlled the story by choosing what to acknowledge and what to let slide. Is the same happening here? Has some global version of the keeper taken root in the halls of heritage and decided this chapter is off limits? Because stories don't vanish on their own. They're buried, carefully, professionally, with gloves and paperwork. And yet, some stories refuse to stay buried. People keep asking, diving, searching. Because there's something primal in the need to understand our origin, not the story in the textbooks. The real one. The Sphinx beneath the waves may never rise, the waters may always churn above it, thick with denial and sediment. But now that you've seen it even in your mind, even in fragments, you can't unsee it. The second guardian is there, not gone, just quiet, not erased, just ignored, but not forever. Because if history teaches us anything, if the tavern taught us anything, it's that truth always finds a way to resurface, especially the kind wrapped in lion paws and hidden just beneath the waves. She stands at the edge of every history book, poised like a shadow, at dusk, tangible, elegant, and then gone. Nefertiti, queen, icon, enigma. Her name still curls on the tongue like incense smoke, familiar, fragrant, and frustratingly fleeting. You've seen her face probably. The bust's serene, impossibly modern eyes lined in black cheekbones, sharp enough to write poetry on. But the truth that vanished long ago. One moment she's everything. The most powerful woman in Egypt. Wife of Akhenaten, co-ruler in one of the strangest periods in Egyptian history. A queen who may have been more than a queen, a reformer, a divine presence, a pharaoh maybe, then nothing. No grave, no confirmed mummy, no ending. She simply disappears. You think back to that sunken Sphinx buried beneath centuries in sand and sea and realize Nefertiti is no different. Not buried under earth, but beneath time and carefully edited memory. Her name fades from inscriptions. Her image stops appearing in official art. The records go silent. Not a gentle silence, like a candle flickering out, but a cut-off. As if someone deliberately turned the page and refused to write the next chapter. Why? Historians still argue over what happened. Did she die? Was she erased by enemies? Or more thrillingly, did she transform into something else? There's a theory that refuses to die. That after Akhenaten's death, Nefertiti didn't fade. She rose under another name, Sphinx, a ruler who appeared too briefly in the official record, wore the royal headdress, issued decrees, then vanished too. Many scholars believe Sphinx was someone else entirely, but some quietly, carefully whisper that Sphinx was Nefertiti, ruling in disguise, bridging the reign of her husband to the boy king Tutankhamun. There's no hard proof, only shadows, incomplete statues, scratched out names, half-legible hieroglyphs that suggest a story too inconvenient for public record. And isn't that the perfect symmetry? A queen who changed Egypt alongside her husband. A woman who may have worn the double crown herself. Then systematic erasure. Her images destroyed. Her name omitted. Her tomb never found. Not because she failed, because she succeeded. Too well. She represented a shift too radical, a time too unstable. Akhenaten had upended centuries of tradition with his monotheistic obsession, abandoning the gods building a city for the Aten, rewriting the rules. And Nefertiti was right there glowing in sun disks, striding in temple carvings as an equal. Not beside her husband, but with him. Not behind, but alongside. You walk through a virtual temple, the columns tall and sunlit. You see where her cartouche used to be carved in stone, now chiseled flat. That kind of defacement isn't weather. It's intentional. Someone didn't just forget her. They made sure you would. But she lingers. In art, in memory, in every eye that stares at that famous bust and wonders, who were you really? Quirk of the mystery, her bust was never found in a tomb or palace. It was found in a sculptor's workshop, unfinished, possibly a practice piece, possibly a sacred object too powerful to discard. Its survival is a miracle. Its beauty almost too precise to be real. Some scholars claim the missing eye was never lost, it was never added. Because Nefertiti, the queen, the maybe pharaoh, the vanished one, was never finished. She's both legend and loss. You think about the lost Sphinx eroding in salt and silence, and you see the echo. Nefertiti, too, is a monument we've barely begun to unearth. Not made of stone, but of absences. Not submerged in water, but in omission. What does it mean to disappear on purpose? To slip from the spotlight and step into myth? To be erased because being remembered was too dangerous? Somewhere in Egypt, under layers of rock and secrecy, she waits. Her tomb, if it exists, has eluded the best of us. It's been sought in the Valley of the Kings, behind Tutankhamun's walls, under the desert floor. But she plays hide and seek with history and wins, because maybe she chose to. And that's the power of mystery. That's the legacy of the woman who vanished. You wander now not through desert or tavern or sea, but through echoes. The echo of laughter bouncing off timber walls of mugs, clinking in dusty corners. The echo of a submerged face staring up from beneath the waves, waiting for the right eyes. The echo of a queen's vanished name, once carved in gold, now whispered only in rooms, not meant for listening. They all hum together, because some stories don't end. The tavern long since faded from your senses still lives somewhere behind your ribs. You remember the dogs, the bread bricks, the stew you probably shouldn't have finished. You remember the keeper's stare, the way the room knew how to be alive without any plan. You remember that you were a part of it, that for one night among strangers you belonged. Then the Sphinx, half buried in sand, half submerged in time. A guardian not of treasures but of memory itself. No plaque, no gift shop, just a shape in the silt that refuses to fit the stories we're told. A reminder that truth doesn't shout, it waits. And finally, Nefertiti. Not a relic, not a statue, but a force. A whisper. A presence in the cracks between history and myth. Her absence says more than any monument ever could. You see them now as part of the same thing. The tavern, the Sphinx, the queen, places and people and symbols that survive, not because they were preserved perfectly, but because they weren't, because they slipped through the cracks, because they defied neat endings. The tavern doesn't exist anymore, not really. Its straw has rotted its walls, collapsed its patrons, long buried, but the idea of it lives. Every time someone raises a mug, or tells a tale too big for truth, or naps under a table after a night well spent, it lives. The second Sphinx may never be officially acknowledged, but it's already real in the minds of the curious, the stubborn, the believers. Its face, half erased, is more honest than any museum label. And Nefertiti, her tomb may never be found. Her secrets may stay locked beneath sand or behind palace walls. But she survives every time we say her name with a little awe, a little doubt, a little wonder. Historians still debate whether these things should matter, if unsolved mysteries deserve space in serious discourse. But you know the answer now. They do, because the things that refuse to be forgotten, the stories that won't die quietly, shape us more than the ones wrapped in certainty. You close your eyes, hear the last notes of a tavern song, see the blurred shadow of stone beneath the sea, feel the eyes of a queen who was never supposed to outlast her statues but did. Somewhere someone tells a story tonight about a night long ago in a place with dogs and stew and ghosts and bread too hard to eat. Somewhere someone dreams of a Sphinx no textbook mentions. Somewhere someone sketches a crown onto a nameless bust and wonders, what if, and that's enough? They endure because stories like people survive not by being perfect, but by being remembered. So now as you settle beneath your blanket, let your breath slow. The tavern grows quiet behind your eyes. The clatter fades. The warmth lingers. That old wooden bench is now just a memory softened, safe, a place you can revisit whenever you need a fire and a story. The desert is still. The wind has gone. The sand sleeps undisturbed over ancient secrets, content to wait a little longer. And Nefertiti still there, not lost, just resting tucked away behind history's heavy curtain. Her silence is not absence. Its presence paused. Let these thoughts drift now like embers rising from a quiet hearth. Let the stories unwind into dreams slow golden and untethered by time. You are safe. You are warm. You've walked through shadows and wonders and echoes that refuse to vanish. And now with a soft exhale and a full heart, you let it all go. The night has held you, the past has whispered, and morning is still a dream away.